recording this session. Great. And we are on. Thank you so much, guys. So, like I said, let us begin. Awesome. So, welcome everyone. I am super excited to be sharing this with you. Like I said, these are some of my personal, I would say, deductions. They are very similar to what we learn every day, but it's just my perspective of things. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a product designer. I was a graphic designer. I am also a psychology student, and I'm currently learning the piano. I'm also a horse rider, and I'm also a design mentor now with a couple of platforms, and ADP being one of them. And group sessions are just the best place for me to come and meet a lot of you, interact with a lot of you, and probably go home with a lot of learnings, right? So that's what I'm here for. And today I'm going to be talking about how design thinking helps me every day and how I feel we can apply it every day in our lives, right? And it is a very well known concept. It is something that all of us, be it designers, be it aspiring designers, we have heard of it, spoken about it, tried to learn it, tried to master it, right? And I want to talk a little bit about how this affects me not only in designing products really well, but I would say I have become a much better person since the time I have discovered design thinking. Like, it was like an amazing thing that happened to me. I don't know how it happened, it just happened. It was subconscious, but I want to share that subconscious process with you, right? So, if you all can hear me and if there's any questions, any doubts, feel free to drop it on the chat. If any audio errors, anything, do let me know. All right. So we all know the 5-way process, and the 5-way process is empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, right? But that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. Well, I will be talking about these 5 processes, but in my own words, in my own ways, and in my own, I think, mix up of things, right? I like reimagining and re-understanding them. So I would say this is an iteration of mine. Feel free to add on to it, and we can talk about it after this as well. Awesome. So, like I said, this is more or less an iteration of the same few processes that we know, the 5 processes. I'm putting it in terms of unlearn to empathize, brainstorm to analyze, ideate, create, and iterate. These are the 3 pillars which I feel we use in various different ways when it comes to problem solving. And just a disclaimer, I'm not speaking of this like a linear process. I'm talking of it more like a dynamic practice, right? It is something that we need to practice no matter what our processes are, right? So I'm going to talk about it in more of a philosophical way more than a technical way. So these are the 3 pillars that I see myself going back to time and again. So the first one, I think, is clearly the most important one for me, because I'll spend the majority of the session talking about unlearning to empathize. How unlearning and being empathetic play a huge factor in being a designer, a problem solver, even a better human being, right? So we will first talk about the second phrase, that is empathize, right? You might wonder, what does empathy have to do with creativity? Like, I think it's a very common question whenever when I first saw the design thinking process, at least, I was wondering, what does empathy have to do with creativity, right? For that, I think we need to understand a little bit about what empathy is, right? So, empathy is a human-centered technique. We all know that. Like I said, all of us know all these concepts. It's just a different iteration, right? So, Dan Norman mentioned in his book that without a deep understanding of people, the design are apt to be faulty, difficult to use, difficult to understand, right? This tells us that we are designing for people, right? For the way people think. Empathy is a lot about that. Like, it's a lot about helping us design for people, right? Empathy helps us extract, learn, and analyze. What this means is Empathy helps us get the information that is required, helps us understand the user better by understanding what the information could be, what their needs could be, what are the needs directing towards, right? When we are working towards understanding their problems, we are actually working towards solving it. After extracting the information, we analyze and find patterns, because empathy, which opens all the doors to so many possibilities, because we just sit there and understand what they need, right? We just want to dig deeper, we just want to understand them better. So I think empathy is a really, really good factor when we want to get information relevant to help them understand things better, right? So the third thing is, being empathetic allows us to explore possibility and perspectives in ways, well, I hadn't imagined, right? It helps me have a really open mind. So, because of which, it helps me be more innovative, right? It helps me create things which I can explore beyond my own mindset, right? I want to explore new things, try new things, because it allows me to look at the new things and accept them and use them and understand them, others' learnings, others' failures, others' success, whatever it is, right? So, one disclaimer before we move on about empathy anymore, that a common misconception is, let's give the user what they want, right? Why not? Why not just give them what they want? Because that would be sympathy. And empathy over here is not sympathy, right? And to understand this, let's take a look at it from the lens of psychology, right? Therapists believe that if you show no empathy to a person, that means you truly never understand your patients and their motivations, right? The sympathy alienates the patient and makes like the whole relationship one-sided, unfriendly, less trustworthy, right? Empathy allows them to treat their patients with compassion, right? They foster very strong relationships, which is mutually beneficial for the patient and the doctor. It requires listening, kindness, and time to truly understand how the patient really needs to evolve. What do they really want, right? And during those times, I feel like they act as a huge support system for human beings. It's a really good point for designers, to be honest, to look at, to learn from, right? We need to understand that if we act out of sympathy and do things that you think people want rather than what they need, I don't think it's going to ever benefit them, right? So, as an empath, I think it's our responsibility to understand the problem, accept, yeah, this is our problem, without making it about ourselves, but the needs of the users, right? And the needs of the product. If we are talking about in terms of even our day to day lives, we shouldn't make everything about ourselves. We should stand outside of the issue, right, as the source of comfort in times which is tough, be it with stakeholders, be it with users, or be it our friends, right? That is why I feel like this has a lot to do with how we apply it in our daily lives, right? Now that we have covered a lot about empathy, moving on to the next phrase, unlearn, right? We all have to unlearn in this process, because without unlearning, I feel like it's very difficult to learn. So, to talk about this, I will start with a quote. This quote was ideally coined as supposed to be the first time the word unlearn ever got coined, right? The whole quote is not important, but Alvin Toffler mentioned, he is a futurist. He wrote this book called Future Shock, and in that he mentioned that the illiterate of the 21st century will be not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? I think we should all just take a while and understand how learn, unlearn, and relearn really work together, right? Unlearning is a process of removing something from our memory, right? When we do remove something from our memory, it's because we have learned something new, which is discarding our false beliefs or our assumptions, right? It's helping us accept new perspectives. It's helping us think outside the box. So let's quickly cover what unlearning really is. Unlearning is letting go, right? It's letting go, like I said, of false beliefs and assumptions that could have worked for us maybe at some point of time, but maybe they don't work always, right? So, letting go of things helps us become more receptive to knowledge, right? Because we are discarding, we have to be careful with what we take as well. We will be wise with what we take as well. We will be more disciplined when it comes to learning, right? The one of the most important things about unlearning, sorry, is that it is a very, very good way to grow, right? The more you unlearn, the more you're going to experience growth and progress, right? It is very critical to assess ourselves, but not to, I would say, not to give ourselves a tough time, but you need to identify the problem, acknowledge that there is a problem, and act towards solving it. That process, ideally, I would call it as evolving, right? You evolve every time you do that. Rather than taking feedback, and when we take it and do not like something that is being said to us, or do not like something that has been said about us. A lot of times when we get design feedback, we assess it, right? We analyze it. The same thing we have to do when it comes to us. We have to assess ourselves so that we can grow and become better human beings, so that our products can grow and become better products, right? It's the same thing. That whole process of evolution applies for us as well. But how do we unlearn, right? Anyone has any thoughts about how we could unlearn? How is this whole unlearning process even working for us? Any thoughts? Anyone listening? I hope I haven't put you all to sleep with my utterly long monologue. While I take a sip of water, anyone wants to give any views about how do we unlearn? You can put it on the chat. That will be totally all right. If you're all with me, are you all with me? Are you all able to hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, any thoughts on how we should unlearn? Mihir says,
Uh, in
yes.
our personal life, we can say like unlearn is something that some misbeliefs which are coming from like previous generation or from other peoples. So we have to analyze that thing and get a kind of research or something, a facts which we have to cross check so that we get to conclusion that is it actually a right or not. So if we are believing that thing, the those misbeliefs, if we are believing in that, so after that analysis we can unlearn that thing. And if it is not right, I think that is the unlearning thing.
Got it.
And
May I know who is speaking? Because I cannot see the name.
Pawan.
Pavan. Thank you so much for sharing that, Pavan. I'm just going to read a few more things before I share my perspective on this. Mihir says breaking a problem into smaller points, maybe according to the first principle. All right. Helen says reverse engineering therapy. That is totally necessary. Felix says unlearning can be done by trying to do it in a new way. Of course, of course. I think one of the best ways to learn something would be to try it in another way, right? Josh says let new information change our behavior or point of view. Polling and interviewing others for fresh perspectives. All right, lot of interesting things over there. I think I would agree with a lot of them, and I haven't covered all of them. I have covered a few of these points though in Crux, but I hope next time I will add all these points as well. So, my first point, I would agree with what Pavan said. Question everything. To analyze something, you have to question everything: the logic, the process, the insight, the ideas, everything, right? And we already do that. We must dig deeper. We do that by looking at gaps, by looking at ideation, by doing surveys, by doing looking at the industry and understanding what it is. By doing interviews, we are questioning people. By doing research, we are questioning the problem. By scoping, we are questioning what is important, right? In the same way, we are already aware of all these design processes that require us to question. But we must question our actions as well, right? Asking questions helps us stay grounded to the projects, to the goals, right? Even in our day to day lives, we must question our intent before acting. We must take feedback and understand so that we can produce a better version of ourselves. A lot like I said, how feedback can help us make better designs and better products. In the same way, by questioning everything, we are going to unlearn only to learn, right? The whole concept of unlearning is only to help us learn, right? The next thing is, why do we use questions, right? All these questions need to have logical reasoning, right? You need to filter between what is important in the known stipulated duration. We sometimes don't have all the time in the world when we are trying to solve the problem. So we need to know which questions are really important here, right? And we need questions to help us identify a lot of opportunities. So many times, if we don't question ourselves, we don't understand people better. We are not able to scope the problems better. We are not able to define them better. Sometimes it reveals things which we wouldn't have even imagined, right? The more you dig deeper, the more you get to know different versions of the same story, or you can say different version of the same problem, how different people face it. As I mentioned earlier, you have to focus more about what they need, right? So asking questions really helps us find out what they need, rather than them just saying that, hey, I want this particular thing, or I want this thing because it looks nice or it feels good. We need questions to also understand their concept, a context, right? We need to put ourselves in their shoes, right? When we put ourselves in their shoes, in a way, it challenges all our assumptions about people, about what they think, what they could think and want. It challenges all of that, and it helps us understand them even better because we are putting ourselves on the stands and we are just focusing on them. You might be thinking, if we keep asking questions every time, everywhere, like the people around us are fortunate, like are going to really, really get annoyed because they will wonder, won't we just be overthinking all the time? Or we might wonder, aren't we overthinking all the time? Which brings me to my second disclaimer of the night. Great questions lead to great design, right? We need to know why we are asking it and what are we expecting really, right? Framing good questions helps us time wisely our plans, our actions, our entire process. We know how we can question ourselves, question everything that comes our way, be it feedback. Now, if you want to take the feedback and analyze it, you might need good questions to really understand what they are saying if you are confused, right? If it's too vague a feedback, you need to ask questions to really corner it down and understand what exactly is bothering them, right? All questions should have logical reasoning to help us focus on what is important. Open ended questions encourage people to reflect and reveal, what is important for them, be it in interviews or be it open ended questions to even understand ourselves, right? It allows people to freely expand on their thought process. So, like I said, to truly unlearn and be empathetic, you need one more thing. Like, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is open minds, right? You cannot do whatever we spoke about till now, whatever is left to discuss. It will not work if we do not have an open mind. Like I said, everything till now is not a hard and fast rule. It is not something that you're supposed to do in a linear process, but it's something that you have to mindfully remember, right? Something I mindfully remember. You might want to make your own process over here, right? So, to truly empathize, we must have an open mind and we must have an exploratory. This word was really tricky right now. Really sorry about that. Exploratory approach. right? So, open minds allow us to learn new things. It allows us to do what is logical and right rather than what is forced or what is pressurized upon. It helps us unlearn so that we can be more inclusive, so that we can give out more liberating and transformative possibilities, right? So, before we go to the next segment of this call or this session, I want to know how's it going so far? And I can't see a lot of videos here. Can I see some people on screen? And can I have some questions? Any questions so far? Have I confused you? Am I saying things which are not making sense? Please tell me, guys. I would really like to know if I'm audible, if I'm clear. If I'm going too fast, feel free to tell me that I'm talking really fast and I should probably cut down on my monologues. Let me know. How have you improved the questions that you ask, that is, user interviews? Zaza, could you elaborate a little bit on your question? I would like to understand a little bit more before I answer that. While I wait for Zaza to retype that and elaborate, I'll go to Dikshit's question. How to develop the knack of asking great questions for better product design? Well, I would say it's something that everything comes with a lot of practice. I wouldn't ever say any of us are naturally good at it, right? All of us practice and learn over time. But a great way to do that, like I said earlier, is to understand what are we expecting in the result? Why are we asking this question? What do we expect will be the answer, right? So, generally, when I have to tell you the difference between open ended and closed ended questions, I would more or less say that when you ask an open ended question, you're going to ask, let's say, like a closed ended yes or no question, right? A one word answer question. If you're going to ask the user, how many, let's say, how many community development platforms do you use, right? Or what community development platforms do you use? If you don't have a follow up question for that particular question, or you didn't have any reason for really asking that, and it was just a collection of data which you do not know why you are taking, you do not know how it is going to help you, that probably could be a question which is not relevant at that point of time, or maybe not relevant because you don't have any points that you need answered there or you're looking towards, right? But if I want to know what platforms they are using, I might have certain follow up questions or certain reasons because of which I'm asking, and I would want a story there. I prefer a lot of long stories from my users, so I indulge them in longer conversations with lesser questions so that I can hear more and consume more rather than giving them any information, right? So I hope that answers your question, Dikshit, but I would say practice till you get perfect. Zaza says, to improve opening your mind or unlearning, learning new informations from the user, how have you improved the questions that you ask? I'm still not quite sure what you mean. Maybe you can unmute yourself and probably talk to me and tell me what it is, and we can probably have a conversation about it. Are you here, Zaza? Yes.
I mean, how to kind of get truly empathize with the user and not let like the stuff that my preconceptions kind of shape my understanding and empathizing with them. So like how to ask questions to unlearn the stuff that I've learned and not let that affect
Right.
my
So
understanding of the user.
I think it's a little bit about your own bias, right? Your
Mhm.
assumptions and your
Yeah,
biases,
exactly.
right? Great. I think that's the second part of the session. We are going to talk a lot
Okay.
about that. So I am
Okay,
going to
great.
answer that in detail.
Okay, great. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great. I'm sorry I took a while to understand the question, but I hope we'll get there now. Awesome. Shall I move on, guys, to the last segment? It's going to be a short one. Shall I? Can I get a heads up, thumbs up on the chat? Let me know, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. Great. So, going back to unlearning and our second stage, that is brainstorm to analyze. This is the next pillar, and this pillar is a practice towards having a more inclusive mindset, I would say. Why? Zaza's question is going to be the answer for this, because we are our worst enemy. One of the biggest problems I have seen when people don't have an open mind is they allow their bias to take control of their narrative, right? When we're trying to solve the problem, our bias has taken control. But to all you folks out there, don't let your bias or ego come in the way. Be ready to question, brainstorm, and analyze, because that's what's going to help you. And you don't have to neglect your bias, you have to use it wisely. Don't say that, hey, I'm just going to ignore all my thoughts and never going to look at it. That's actually going to work up on really pent up feelings, and you're in the end going to execute what you want to, because your assumptions will always stay assumptions if you don't go and validate them, right? So if you have biases, all you need to do is you need to have solid reasonings behind everything. You need to start by asking questions. Have an answer for everything you do. So if you decided to go, let's say you decided your target audience and you realize that you don't need user interviews just yet, you probably want to collect some data with desk research because of some bias that you had, right? It doesn't matter what your bias is telling you about the solution, that hey, if you do desk research it might get validated and you will get so and so solution. Why don't you ask yourself, what if it doesn't, right? What then? Rather than trying to get what you think validated, question yourself, why this? Why not something else? If something else happened, then what would I do? If the user doesn't have the problem I think they have, then what? Right? So always question yourself and have good reasoning behind your actions. If you want to use a method of analyzing information, you should know why you're using that method to analyze information. Not because I used it, let's say, in my portfolio and you saw it and you were like, hey, that is nice. No, that's your bias speaking. That is nice because it looked probably visually nice. But is it really important for our portfolio? Right? You need to stop your bias by brainstorming. How brainstorming? Because when you brainstorm, you're going to start understanding all these assumptions. You're going to dig deeper. You're going to ask all these questions. And you're going to get a full picture of what this scenario is. In our industry terms, we would call this research. We would take all our assumptions and we would start get this entire information out by either talking to people, by either conducting surveys, by either doing competitive research, however, by looking at data that has been used on your product, how people are using it. It could be anything, because you have a lot of assumptions. These assumptions are your starting point. They shouldn't be your final point, right? They should be your starting point. You should have to let go of them if they are false beliefs and assumptions, right? You have to unlearn them if they are wrong, and you have to learn what is right. And you have to analyze to know what works. Of course, you're going to get a dump of information when you start researching. You're going to get a dump of information when you start talking to people. When you start digging deeper, you will have a dump of questions. That's when you need to start analyzing and organizing, because I think organizing in general gives me a lot of peace. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm stressed, I clean. So I feel like whenever the problem is getting much more trickier, I think it's always best to pace yourself out, and organize the information that you have, rescope, and begin again, right? That is how we have to go ahead. Get grounded to the problem again. Ask the right questions, get grounded again, analyze what is needed, what works. And finally, don't chase validation, right? Don't forcefully try to get your assumptions validated. That is when you're going to let your bias win. You should try and understand your assumptions. Don't worry if your assumptions fail, right? And it didn't roll out the way you expected to, and it probably would have been super cool if it did. But I'm sure if your assumption didn't work out, you learned something even more valuable, right? Even if your assumption got invalidated, I am sure you got something even more valuable because you would have learned something new. You would have learned something that would have probably changed your perspective drastically, right? And it's very important to focus on it. It's important to focus on what you're getting from the process rather than if your process is working out or not, right? If your solution is being implemented or not. You will do what is right rather than what you want to do. And unlearning can be very difficult. Yes, super, super difficult. It's a battle of our idea of what is right and of actually doing the right thing. And we face this every day in multiple circumstances in life, right? There have been a lot of times in day to day lives where we have learned that our assumptions and our beliefs or something. I have seen it in my parents, right? There are things, there is data in front of them to believe otherwise, but it is really difficult, right? It's years and years of notions and concepts which we are not able to change just like that. We need more. We need them to take the first step to unlearn those years of beliefs and misconceptions. Which brings us to our final pillar: ideate, create, and iterate. We are we sort of unlearn and relearn even when you are near your solutions, right? Just because you are near your solutions doesn't mean those steps ended in the beginning and you never have to come back to them, right? You have to have an open mind to achieve the fullest potential for your solution, right? Ideation helps us reach our solution. Either the idea has to be validated or has data supporting a strong solution, even to or even ideate ways to understand the user better. You can ideate about literally everything. You want to ideate about ideating, I'm game. Like that is one of the best things like I like spending my time on is brainstorming and ideating. These few steps I do very, very often. That is why I chose to share this with all of you, even in my day to day life, right? And after we ideate, we try to create them, execute them, and test them. What's the use, like, if we had all these ideas but we don't really test them out and we don't really see if our design really worked? So we must test it out once it's done. And to test it out, we have to create it. It's kind of obvious, right? So let me get a little bit philosophical again here. We should understand that if someone, let's say, perceived us in negative light, then maybe, I'm just saying maybe, no, please don't take it personally. Maybe our design failed as a human being there. If they are looking at us in negative light, maybe we did something for them to look at us in negative light, right? So, in situations like this, we can dig deeper and understand the situation to ideate and create a better perception of ourselves and then test it out. And well, you might say, what if it doesn't work? Yeah, a lot of times our solutions fail, our ideas fail. Yes, sometimes it backfires badly, but it's okay. It's absolutely fine if your design has failed. You just have to try again, right? Do not, that's the best part. Iterating is the best part about being a designer because I know my intent was in the right place. If I made a mistake, it's an honest mistake. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try again till I fix it. You have to be opening to solving, refining, iterating, post feedback, right? And feedback, like I mentioned earlier, is just going to make things better for you, even as a human being. Like, initially, I had a tough time taking feedback. I think I would say, in terms of design, I can still take feedback as a individual, maybe slightly difficult even now. And I would say I'm getting there, and it will get better, right? The more feedback I take, the more I understand how I how I show myself to be, or how I am prototyping myself in reality, right? And that is what people are going to see. And again, like questioning everything, you might wonder, are we supposed to take all the feedback in the world? Because even when we are designing, let's say, products, or if we are interacting with people, there is a huge possibility that we will get bombarded with feedback. And as a designer, both graphic and product, I think I have been heavily bombarded with feedback all my life. And for this, all I'd like to say is analyze the feedback the same way you would analyze any piece of information. See what method will help you understand the feedback, do what is possible and what is needed, right? And a lot of times people think design thinking is mainly for products, but I hope after this session I am able to share the same thought with you, that this discipline can be applied to everything we do, including empathy, right? We have to work towards changing our mindsets. We have to take better baby steps to becoming an empath, not just to be a better designer, but to be in love with the person that you are, right? Your good intent is going to drive you to make amazing designs, to understand the product, the people better, to do good for the business, to do good for people, do good for all your loved ones around you, right? And disclaimer, I am not expecting you guys to do it overnight. Of course not. It didn't happen to me overnight. And mind you guys, I didn't even know I was doing it, because design thinking just became so inherent. I didn't even realize how I had become to taking feedback. I was so open to it. If someone gives me feedback, I started analyzing and assessing, okay, all right, so if this happened, all right, okay, we could have done it this way, right? My brain was not taking it in a negative way that, oh my god, that person hated on me. It was more like, thank you, you probably changed my life, right? So I really think you just have to remember that design thinking can do a lot more than make you better designers. Thank you so much, guys. And if you have any questions, here's where we would take them ideally, because I have spoken for a while, so I am just going to take questions for a bit. Awesome. Helen, thank you so much. I didn't know I hit a lot of points, but I am glad that I did. I am so glad that I did, because I feel like this is a very relatable conversation. And please do hit me up after this. I would really like to talk to all of you. And please, anyone wants to share your opinion, I would like to know a little bit about what you thought, what you think about this, what are your views, before we close for the night. Just casual conversation, guys.
Hello. Hi, Arpita.
Hi Shruti, what's
Yeah.
up?
So, all good, amazing. So, just a bit I wanted to share. Basically, emphasizing on the concept of assumption which you spoke about, right? So, this is actually coming from a personal experience. This is actually a personal story which happened at a friend's house. So how just something about design thinking. So his kids were actually fighting over an orange, and we had this Q&A about what would you do to so that the orange goes to each of the kid. And we asked a lot of people. So people were like, the kids should share the orange, or you can split it into half, or you can buy another orange for both the kids. So the question was like, did we actually ask the kids that why were they fighting for that orange? Because that person actually said that one child, he actually did not want the orange. He was just he actually thought that it was a toy, and he was just chasing his elder brother for it. So the concept of asking our users, just a very simple example of design thinking in our real
Day to
life,
day
you know.
life, yes.
So asking the users what actually they want, analyzing it at our end, not assuming things at all, not assuming how what I think the user would like, you know. And as a visual designer, we do a lot of UX and UI. Even in UX, obviously we do a lot
Yeah.
of user study. In UI as well, we have a lot of visual approach to, okay, this looks damn pretty, I want this theme to work out, I want this CTA to be placed here because it very well works with the composition, right? But that's not how our users are going to perceive, right? So
Yes.
we need to have like an open-ended mind to understand the people.
Totally,
Yeah,
Shruti.
just wanted to share a
Totally.
bit.
Thank you so much for sharing, Shruti. Like, this was, I love the orange example. Like, no one really asked the
Yeah,
child why, why,
exactly,
right?
why
This
were
is
you in fighting?
totally, I totally agree. This has happened with me multiple times. Like, let's say for bad habits, right?
Hmm.
My mother would, let's say, shout at me, "Why are you doing this? I'm not okay
Hmm.
with it." And
Hmm.
and there will be rage, there will be
Hmm.
wrath, and it'll all be because she thinks that my character will be assassinated because of these bad habits.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then I ask them, "Why are you really concerned? Because you will die, my child. That is what it is." But they never say that. They never say, "You will die, my child, and we don't want to lose you." They will say that, what will people think about you, that you're smoking a cigarette
Hmm.
out there, right? So that is the whole notion has changed. So I feel like intent will help us a lot there, right?
Exactly.
What we do as human beings, what we want to do for people will help us a lot there. Thank you so much, Shruti, for sharing that.
Awesome.
And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And if you can turn on your cameras, how many of you are left? Let's take a picture. I want to post a picture, guys. This is like technically my first. Last one, I forgot to take a picture. So this one, I want to take a picture. Oh, Felix is here. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey
Yes.
everyone, let's turn on our camera.
Yes, everyone, let's turn on our cameras.
Yeah, let's show some support.
Let's do that. A few of us are here. Thank you, Shruti. Great. Thank you, Felix. I can only see 6 people in my grid. Is there any way for me to change it, Felix?
For now, no. So I think we have to take like screen by screen.
No worries. I will do that. All right. I am going to take a screenshot. More cameras on, please. More cameras, people. Okay, I'm gonna go for it now. Where is it? Oh, yeah. 3, 2, 1. Smile, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for attending this session. Really glad. Oh, hi, Adrian. That is so cute. Awesome. Thank you, guys, for attending this session. See you all. See you.
Thanks, Arpita. Have a great
Thank you so
weekend.
much.
See you,
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Arpita.
Ah, Andrea,
Hi,
so cute.
Andrea.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you so much for attending, guys. Have a good night, good day, good evening, wherever you are.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Good night.
Good night.